A couple things I was just reminded of that I neglected to mention before is out on the Circle Drive, we have what is called a blessing box now. And that was installed yesterday by Lucas McConnell with help from his father, John. And this is his Eagle project. And we are going to stock that with water as people, borrow some of our shade. And we have a little bench out there. And oftentimes people will just rest there as they're walking up and down Cedar. And so go out and take a look. It isn't 100% finished, but it is a very nice addition to what we have for people in the Circle Drive. The other thing I want to tell you is kind of funny. I was talking to Pastor Nick on vacation, and he said, Beth and I joined this Lutheran church, and the next week, the pastor said, hey, you're a retired Lutheran pastor. Let's get to know each other. Let's have some coffee. Fine. So they went out for coffee, and it was at that moment that she told Pastor Nick, before she told the council or the congregation, that she had taken another call. So guess what Pastor Nick is doing now? He is the interim pastor of a congregation in Oregon. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy, right? Anyway, so now I got to go to Oregon and sit in the back and, heckle, right? Heckle. So we're reading in Matthew chapter 11, my favorite chapter in Matthew, and you'll find out in a little while why that is. But we're starting Matthew chapter 11, we're starting at the 16th verse. Jesus says, "But to what will I compare this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplaces and calling to one another. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We wailed, and you did not mourn. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, he has a demon. And the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds." Then at 25, at that time Jesus said, "I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the intelligent and have revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Have you ever said this or heard somebody else say something like, every time I read a passage of the Bible, I hear something new in it? I hear that a lot from people who are reading their Bibles. Maybe you've done this. I know I've done it. Happens to me all the time. And it makes sense because when you read something at any particular point in your life, you're reading it in the context of your life at that moment. You're reading it as a kid, or you're reading that as an older person, or you're reading that after some big life transition. And the context in which, your life context in which you're encountering those words from the Bible, give you a particular angle into the text, a point of view. And those points of view change, don't they, as we age and experience and grow a little bit wiser. So as you age, as you mature, your point of view will mature as well, hopefully. And this changing point of view, this always evolving sense of reality that shapes our appreciation of a particular text over time, is fluid. And so we really should expect that when we read the Bible from time to time, place to place, it will reveal different things to us. And there are times when this happens immediately and sometimes cataclysmically, when something in your life brings the Bible's wisdom into razor-sharp relief. That's happened 2 times in my life. The first time was the Sunday after the Northridge earthquake in 1994. You probably didn't feel it up here, but where I was living, we felt it in quite an astounding way. So the quake itself happened in the early hours of January 17th, a date that will live in infamy, to borrow FDR's famous phrase. It turned out to be a 6.7 on the Richter scale, but its epicenter was just 8 short miles from my bedroom, and it felt more like 50 million on the Richter scale. The quake hit early on a Monday morning. On the preaching schedule for the following Sunday, I was up, and the text I chose was a familiar one to me, and I'm sure familiar to a lot of you as well. And certainly it was familiar to all the people who were packed into the church that day. But I want you to hear it now the way I did, if you can, as someone who has just gone through one of the most energetic and destructive earthquakes in California history. So put yourself in that space. Here we go. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. Those happen to be the opening words of Psalm 46, the psalm, by the way, that Luther used as inspiration for his most famous hymn, Mighty Fortress is Our God. And let me tell you, on Sunday, January 23rd, 1994, nobody in the pews that day had to imagine what the psalm writer was thinking about when he penned those words, because the mountains were trembling, still trembling. We joke that almost everything you do in life happened in the next few weeks during an aftershock. I mean, sleeping, writing sermons, waking up, going to sleep, driving the car, going to the pharmacy, whatever you did for 2 weeks probably happened during one of the many aftershocks we had. So we listened to these words as people who were still trembling, still sweeping up broken glass, still, trying to contact contractors and our insurance companies to repair the holes in our roofs, still doing our best without water or electricity. We were all, in a word, a mess. Our homes were no longer places of refuge, but places of danger. Our neighborhoods were strewn with caution tape and red flags indicating a condemned home that people could no longer inhabit. Instead of green lawns and flower beds out in front of everybody's houses, you saw tents and barbecue grills where people lived because they were afraid to live in their houses. I'm playing with my ear thing, by the way, and I hope that's not too distracting to you, but a lot of different ears have worn this thing, and none of them are my ear shape, so we're going to just kind of live into it. But anyway, every nerve was frayed. Nothing was the same. It was a time of great confusion, disorientation even, except one thing. Lisa said that, she got, surprise, 6 more kids for a while. And when those things happen, she hit the nail on the head. Excuse me. When I go through things like that, I think about, okay, what does this change? What does this not change? And what that quake did and what it did to families and the people who lost their lives and were injured by flying glass and all that stuff. What it didn't change was the promise. The promise written down thousands of years ago, read and sung by millions of Christians, generation after generation. Though the mountains tremble, God is our refuge and strength, or to put it in Luther's words, a mighty fortress is our God. So I will never read that verse or ponder that promise without being transported back to that Sunday, almost 26 years ago now. That was the day Psalm 46 came alive for me. It had always been true. The truth of the Bible isn't dependent on how I interpret it, to be sure. But what I had gone through made those verses present and potent and powerful and palpable in a way they had never been before, and in a way that will never, ever leave me, ever again. Because I needed them those weeks like I'd never needed them before. Everybody in Southern California did. So that was the first time a Bible verse I knew took on an unexpected and unexpectedly sudden and powerful new meaning for me. The second time that's happened started about 3 years ago. At the end of the reading, our reading today is what I like to call the punchline. Here it is. Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's my confirmation verse. I know it by heart. I don't know a lot of the Bible by heart, but I got that one down. I know it by heart. I knew it by heart. But I hadn't lived it. Not really. Until, as we all know, something else completely unexpected and in its own way cataclysmic happened. COVID arrived on the scene. Psalm 46 got to me because I lived through the mountains shaking. I experienced the earth heaving and falling under me. I felt the tumult. But COVID, it was different, right? It wasn't just a city or a region going through something, but the whole world. And I think the verse describes what so many of us were feeling in the thick of it. Maybe some of us are still feeling it. The whole world got weary altogether. The whole world got traumatized altogether. At least with a natural disaster, an earthquake or a flood or a fire or whatever, it happens in a discrete place, which means you can get away from it. You can go to a place where whatever is happening there isn't happening somewhere else. I took my family to my in-laws' house where the water and power worked just fine and the roof wasn't in danger of collapsing in on us. You can't do that with a pandemic, can you? It's everywhere. That's what makes it a pandemic. Pan is a Greek prefix meaning all or of everything. So everything attached to COVID was everywhere. It affected everyone. And because of the effects, some folks got angry about everything. It's very hard to walk away from frustration when it's all around you. So, I talk about COVID in the past tense. I think that's hopeful. Like we're free and clear from it. I'm not so sure that we are. I pray that we are. Kristen and I were coming home from a run to Costco the first week of June or so. We saw something that just baffled me. It was about 8 or 10 people holding up signs saying mask wearing is a farce. I thought, guys, nobody's wearing masks anymore. I mean, you talk about a day late and a dollar short. I mean, who are they talking to? What are they complaining about? But, people are still getting sick from COVID. And there are a good number of people who are still, for various reasons, ticked off about it. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of dealing with the divisiveness that COVID kicked up. That divisiveness, let me tell you, is still a thing. I wish it weren't. I'm sure I'm not alone in wishing that it weren't around, but it is. So it's time to check in since we haven't seen each other for a while. How are you doing? Good. I'm glad to hear it. In the weariness and heavily laden categories, we all locate ourselves without knowing it, right? And it changes, coming back from a vacation. My weariness, exhaustion level is very low. But it's not that way for all of us, is it? And I'm not just talking about the late and perhaps ongoing pandemic. I'm talking about in general, regular life, your place in life, the lives of the people you love. How are people doing? I'm not trying to kick up anything more than it's already swirling around. And I'm not trying to bum any of us out, but, of course, nobody needs my help with that. But what I am trying to say is that we've been through a lot, and we need to be honest about that, and we will continue to be through a lot, and we need to be honest about that too. Life can be wearying. It just is. And weariness shows up in a whole bunch of unconstructive ways. If it's not tended to, it can manifest itself as depression, disorientation, exhaustion, as people fight to get their bearings, as things unrelentingly change from day to day. So what to do? Where to go? Who to turn to get a handle on things, to get settled down, to reorient ourselves. Because it's important to do that. It's important because if we don't find a place of peace, we will find places of what? Anger or fear or frustration or disorientation or discombobulation, whatever you want to talk about. If we don't find places of rest and peace, we are going to find places that offer just the opposite. And that's not good. We'll start taking out on others what isn't at rest in us. And I think, we've all been around for the last few years. We know what that's like, right? So if we don't take care of what's going on inside of us, what happens then? What happens when we are deaf to what's going on inside of us and blind to what's going on in the lives of those around us? Who notices then? Well, we know the answer, right? Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest, Jesus says. The thing to do every new day is to listen to Jesus' words with new ears, with fresh ears, with open and eager ears. And not just to hear them, that's the easy part, but let them sink in. Let those words take up residence in our spirits. Because if we take Jesus' words to heart, if we hear the words of the Bible as Jesus speaking directly to us, then that's when we become changed by them, saved by them. Have you experienced that ever? Do you think you could give it a try if you haven't? Can you take what is unsettled in you to Jesus? What is confusing to you? What upsets you? What worries you? Can you take those things to Jesus? Can you hand it over? Can you entrust it to Him? Or have you decided that the only person who can handle them is you, and you'll take on more and more and more and more until something breaks? I'll be honest with you. One of the reasons I sometimes have a hard time handing over my problems to God is then I can't take credit for solving them. Maybe that's just a guy affliction, I don't know, but we like to fix things. Yesterday I came in yesterday to do a few things to catch up a little bit. I went out to my car, I turned the key, and it went click. And I'm thinking back to about 5 weeks ago when the exact same thing happened to me, and I thought, I know what the problem is. I need a new battery. So I sent my son to get a new battery. He met me here the next day. We put it in, we hooked it up, and the car turned over. Problem solved. So here I am after driving 47,000 miles, and I can't get my car to start. So I do what any self-respecting guy does. I get out of the car, I open the hood, and I look at all the dark, greasy shapes under there. And I thought, sometimes the simplest solution is the one you're looking for. So I thought, you know what? I'll just start wiggling things. Trust me, this has a happy ending. So I'm wiggling the negative lead, nothing. I'm pounding on the carburetor, nothing. I wiggle the positive lead, and all of a sudden, I hear my radio going in the car because I left the key to the accessory setting. I go, that's probably a good sign. So, vroom, touchdown. Solved the problem. I get home and I grab a hammer and and wait a minute, wait for it, and a crescent wrench. And Kristen says, "Where are you going with the hammer?" See, I worked as a carpenter. You know what carpenter? You know, if you just bang on it, it's something good's going to happen, right? So I go, "Where are you going?" I'm going to fix the car. She says, "What happened to the car?" I think she was thinking, "What's going to happen to the car?" So I noticed that, you have the lead over the cathode, and I thought, if I just tap that down and tighten it up, this will never happen to me again. And guess what? A day later, it's never happened to me again. I've only turned the car on once, but I'm, batting 1,000. So, if you want to hang back, especially if you've got jumper cables, and wait to see if the pilot actually leaves after church, I don't know. But anyway, you know what I'm saying, right? If we hand over our problems to God, we don't get credit for solving them. And that's weird, right? But isn't that how we operate? We humans, we want to just hold back just a little bit, right? We tend not to want to put all our eggs in one basket, even if it's God's basket. Maybe we don't think we can really do it even if we tried. But I got news for you. You can. You can give your problems to God because it's God's will that we do, and God doesn't give us a will to do things we're incapable of. It is possible to do what Jesus bids us to do here in Matthew chapter 11. So we need to be honest where we're in need, right? That's first and foremost, and that's never been fun. That will never be fun. We need to take stock. Something I think most important is to listen to Jesus as people who know how desperately we need what he offers. Listen as his followers who are willing to stake our survival on the truth he proclaims. That when we come to him, we will find what we need, whatever it is. Now, what I'm not saying is, go home, read the Bible, and kick back. No. We all need to stay vigilant and careful and smart and work for the good of our families and for the good of our neighbors, but we will never be at our best if our strategy for dealing with the way the world is now does not begin with the promises only God can make and the power only God can supply. That's what Jesus is talking about when he talks about his yoke. When he offers his yoke, this is a metaphorical reference to the bar that goes across oxen's shoulders that attach them to the plow or the wagon or whatever it is you're trying to move. He isn't promising to take away magically everything you're struggling with. Right? That would be a silly interpretation because we know it doesn't work that way. But what he is offering is a relationship where what's great about God meets whatever it is you're struggling with. When we accept his yoke, when we enter into this relationship, then we're not on our own, are we? No. We're in a relationship with God where what is great about God meets what is hurting us or scaring us or causing us anxiety or whatever it is we're up against. In that relationship, God is welcomed to play a part. And by the way, he's not offering escape. He's offering the power to endure. He's offering a refuge, a place of rest and recovery. And when we're rested, when we're recovered, from the depths of our souls to the tips of our fingers, then we will be ready to work at and engage with and be present to the stuff that life throws at us. Spend time with God in word and worship and in conversation with your Christian friends until the path forward emerges. I like that image that Lisa gave us of the mountain goats on those tiny little paths. You wouldn't think they'd be able to go up and down those mountainsides, but they've got a path. They know where their feet should go. If God does that for mountain goats, will He not also do that for us? He will. This is an opportunity, I think, to take a good, hard look inside and then reach out. God, through His prophet Jeremiah, said, and Lisa, you stole my thunder on this one. Did you read this first? Because I'm quoting Jeremiah. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. That's a pretty incredible promise. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I think the best news of all is that in Jesus, God finds us. And in Jesus, God proclaims the search over. Go to Jesus, trust Him for everything you need, and find your rest. This is what this verse promises. And when we're put together, when we're put back together in this trusting relationship with the Son of God, we'll be better able to love God and love our neighbors no matter what life presents. And by loving as God loves, we will be lifted up and able to help others more than any burden can weigh us down. Don't you think? Let's pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for the promises you make to us every day, for the promises you've made us through your prophet Jeremiah, through Habakkuk, through the words of both your testaments, Old and New. Today especially, help us to cling to the promise to be always available to us, to put down our burdens and take up the yoke that Jesus offers, a yoke of relationship, a yoke of promise, a yoke of relief and rest and recovery. Help us to cast all our cares on you. And in this sacramental moment, help us to remember all that you did for us on that night before you gave your very all. As we remember that in the night in which he was betrayed, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body given for you. Do this for the remembrance of me." Again, after supper, he took the cup. And when he had given thanks, he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and drink. This cup is the new covenant in my blood, poured out for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sin. Do this for the remembrance of me." And so we do. Eat and drink and remember, as Jesus has bid us as his followers to do. And we celebrate this great gift by praying the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples the night he shared this meal with them. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.